The year was 1882. The sun of the British Empire stood at its zenith. And just as the British ruled much of the world, England, the main force which drove Britain, ruled cricket, a game which was actually born there. The only other country which played cricket at that time was Australia, a country which in essence was also formed by the British. England and Australia decided to play test matches against each other in 1877, but it was in 1882 when Australia won its first test victory on English soil with a remarkable and unlikely victory at the Oval that the drama really commenced. Requiring a mere 85 runs to win in the second innings, England were undone by the Australian fast bowler Fred Spofforth and lost by 10 runs. The next day, the Sporting Times, an English newspaper, published a satirical obituary where it announced that English cricket had died and that the body will be cremated and the ashes taken to Australia. These metaphorical ashes influenced popular English sentiment so much that when the English cricket team set out for Australia within a few months for the return test series of 1882-83, their captain, the Honourable Ivo Bligh, vowed to regain those ashes. Indeed, after England won 2 of the 3 tests on the tour, a small urn was presented to Bligh at Melbourne. The contents of the urn are reputed to be the ashes of a wooden bale and were humorously described as the ashes of Australian cricket. It is not clear whether that tiny silver urn is the same as the small terracotta urn given to the Marylebone Cricket Club or MCC by Bligh's widow after his death in 1927. But by that time, the ashes had become the official pseudonym of test series played against England and Australia, representing what is perhaps the oldest sporting rivalry in any game. The story has continued for 143 years, interrupted only by the First and Second World Wars. Interestingly, the Ashes urn has never been the official trophy of the series, having been a personal gift to Bligh, but replicas of the urn have often been held aloft by the winning team as a symbol of their victory. For the statistically inclined, here's an important piece of information. There have been a total of 73 Ashes series played since 1882. Australia have won 34 and retained 6 times from draws, which takes their possession of the Ashes to 40. For England, that number has been 33 with 32 wins and a single draw. Up to the First World War, England and Australia were evenly matched, with both countries enjoying limited periods of continued dominance. After the war, though, Australia took firm control of both the Ashes and world cricket. Their tactic of using 2 express bowlers in tandem paid off, as Jack Gregory and Ted MacDonald crippled the English batting on a regular basis, and Australia recorded overwhelming victories both in England and on home soil. It won the first 8 matches in succession, including a 5-0 whitewash in 1920-21 at the hands of Warwick Armstrong's team. England won only 1 test out of 15 from the end of the war until 1925. Then, in a rain-hit series in 1926, England managed to eke out a 1-0 victory with a win in the final test at the Oval. Australia's aging post-war team broke up after 1926, with Collins, Charlie McCartney and Warren Bardsley all departing and Gregory breaking down at the start of the 1928-29 series. And then came Donald Bradman.
Don Bradman, the pride of Australia and the despair of England. But whichever side one favours, who can but acclaim a master?
Despite Bradman's debut in the 1928-29 series, the inexperienced Australians, led by Jack Ryder, were heavily defeated, losing 4-1. Bradman showed glimpses of what lay ahead in the future, topping the batting averages with 66.85 runs per innings, which was of course much lower than what he ended his career with. In 1930, Bill Woodfull led an extremely inexperienced team to England, and Bradman's career shot off into the sky when he scored 974 runs at 139.14, which remains a world record Test series aggregate. In the Headingley Test, he made 334, reaching 309 at the end of the first day, including a century before lunch. Australia had one of the strongest batting lineups ever in the early 1930s, with Bradman, Archie Jackson, Stan McCabe, Bill Woodfull, Bill Ponsford and Jack Fingleton. It was the prospect of bowling at this lineup that caused England's 1932-33 captain Douglas Jardine to adopt the tactic of fast leg theory, better known as bodyline. Rarely has sport threatened political turmoil between two countries. However, this is exactly what happened during the Ashes of 1932-33, when the English team touring Australia resorted to the infamous strategy of bodyline. The English captain Douglas Jardine instructed his fast bowlers, most notably Harold Larwood and Bill Vose, to bowl at the bodies of the Australian batsmen, with the goal of forcing them to defend their bodies with their bats, thus providing easy catches to a stacked leg side field. Jardine insisted that the tactic was legitimate and called it leg theory, but it was widely disparaged by its opponents, who dubbed it bodyline, meaning a ball on the line of the body. Although England decisively won the Ashes 4-1, bodyline caused such a furore in Australia that diplomats had to intervene to prevent serious harm to Anglo-Australian relations, and the MCC eventually changed the laws of cricket to curtail the number of leg side fielders. The bodyline series still remains one of the most controversial Test series ever played in the history of the game. It also marked for the first time the cold professionalism required to satisfy a fierce desire to win a cricket match. Cricket no longer remained a gentleman's game after bodyline. And what better could sum this permanent change than what Jardine said during the series itself? "I've not travelled 6,000 miles to make friends. I'm here to win the Ashes." However, sportsmanship still fought on, with the Australian captain Woodfull flatly refusing to use the English tactics himself, and famously telling the England manager Pelham Warner, when he came to express his sympathy at Woodfull's injury due to a Larwood bouncer, "There are two teams out there. One is playing cricket, the other is making no attempt to do so." Importantly, however, bodyline effectively curbed Donald Bradman, who averaged only 56.57, which very interestingly was still the highest among all batsmen of both sides. On the batting-friendly wickets that prevailed in the late 1930s, most tests up to the Second World War still gave results, with Australia, courtesy Don Bradman, retaining the Ashes comfortably after they won it back from England in 1934. Then came the Second World War, which stopped cricket for 8 long years, also perhaps robbing Don Bradman of the best batting form of his life. The Ashes resumed after the war when England toured in 1946-47. As they had in 1920-21, after the end of the First World War, England found that Australia had made the better post-war recovery. Still captained by Bradman, and now featuring the lethal new ball partnership of Ray Lindwall and Keith Miller, Australia were convincing winners, swamping England 3-0. Even in 1948, Australia set new standards, completely outplaying its hosts to win 4-0 with one draw. This Australian team, led by Bradman, who turned 40 during his final tour of England, has gone down in history as the Invincibles. They remained unbeaten in all 34 matches of the tour, winning 27 and drawing 7. The 1948 series ended with one of the most poignant moments in cricket history as Bradman played his final innings for Australia in the 5th Test at the Oval. Needing to score only 4 runs to end with a career batting average of exactly 100, Bradman made a second ball duck, bowled by an Eric Hollis googly that sent him into retirement with a career average of 99.94.
Australia's innings has come to a close.
England finally turned things around in 1953 when they won the final test at the Oval to take the series 1-0, having narrowly avoided defeat in the preceding test at Headingley. However, the Ashes in the 1950s were dominated by individual performances, with Frank Tyson decimating Australia in the 1954-55 series, which England won 3-1, and then off-spinner Jim Laker's monumental effort at Old Trafford in 1956, when he bowled 68 of 191 overs to take 19 out of 20 possible Australian wickets in the 4th Test. In fact, Don Bradman rated that team that won the series 2-1 as England's best ever. Australia found their answer in the very next series in 1958 though, having found a high-quality spinner of their own in new skipper Richie Benaud, who took 31 wickets in the 5-Test series, and paceman Alan Davidson, who took 24 wickets at 19. The tempo of the play changed in the 1960s when the powerful array of bowlers that both countries boasted in the preceding decade moved into retirement, and their replacements were of lesser quality, making it more difficult to force a result. England failed to win any series during the 1960s, a period dominated by draws, as teams found it more prudent to save face than risk losing. Of the 20 tests played during the 4 series, Australia won 4 and England 3. The 70s started with Dennis Lillee, one of the greatest fast bowlers the world has ever seen, bursting forth in the 1970-71 series. This series, however, was won by England under captain Ray Illingworth, who used the fire of his own fast bowler, the tall and lanky John Snow, who helped England win 2-0. Lillee made a big mark in the return series in England in 1972, which was drawn 2-2, with England under Illingworth retaining the Ashes. The Lillee storm truly broke upon England in the series of 1974-75, when he, with his newly found fast bowling partner Jeff Thomson, wreaked absolute havoc among the English batsmen, blowing them away 4-1 and instilling in them the fear of their lives, as the Aussie crowds chanted, "Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, if Tomo don't get here, Lillee must." Such was England's disarray that the 41-year-old Colin Cowdrey was brought back from retirement directly into a test match. Cowdrey actually fought rather gamely, scoring 41 runs in only his second innings of the tour on a super-fast Perth wicket. What went into cricketing lore, however, was his self-introduction to Jeff Thomson, where he famously shook the hand of a rather bewildered Tomo mid-pitch and said, "Hello, I'm Colin Cowdrey. I don't believe we have met." In 1977, when the centenary test was played between England and Australia, history repeated itself rather remarkably. Australia won in Melbourne by 45 runs, exactly the same margin by which they had 100 years earlier at the same venue. Dennis Lillee it was again, who took 6 for 26 in the second innings as England folded for a mere 95. And then cricket changed forever. Kerry Packer announced his intention to form World Series Cricket. This World Series Cricket, or WSC, affected all test-playing nations, but it weakened Australia especially as the bulk of its players had signed up with Packer. The Australian Cricket Board would not select WSC contracted players, and an almost completely new test team had to be formed. The English made most of the situation, and under Mike Brearley, they won the 1977 series 3-0 and then completed an overwhelming 5-1 series win against a second-string Australian side missing its WSC players in 1978-79.
Caught by Hughes, magnificent catch. Left-hand catch by Hughes, boycott. Caught Hughes, bowled off for 13. A vital wicket for Australia. It's 2 for 38. Brilliant
Then
batsman.
peace was made. Pajama cricket with its colourful jerseys and night cricket under artificial lights was absorbed permanently into the game. Ian Botham, one of the greatest all-rounders of the game, had made his debut in the 1977 series, which created history with one of the finest all-round performances the game has ever seen at Headingley, the venue of the third test of the 1981 series. Botham had become captain that series, but showed dismal form, losing the first 2 tests, after which he resigned, and Mike Brearley took charge again. Then, at Headingley, in an absolutely fantastic test match, Australia looked certain to take a 2-0 series lead after it had forced England to follow on 227 runs behind. England, despite being 135 for 7, produced a second innings total of 356, Botham scoring 149 not out. Chasing just 130, Australia were sensationally dismissed for 111, Bob Willis taking 8 for 43. It was the first time since 1894-95 that a team following on had won a test match. Under Brearley's leadership, England went on to win the next 2 matches before a drawn final match at the Oval. This series became known as Botham's Ashes for his extraordinary feats with both bat and ball, after being dismissed as captain. England and Australia then exchanged the Ashes repeatedly in the rest of the decade, Australia winning in 1982-83 and England regaining the Ashes in 1985 and retaining it in 86-87. Australia rejuvenated in 1989 under the leadership of Alan Border, resoundingly defeated England 4-0. The 1989 team, led by Alan Border, with the young cricketers Mark Taylor, Merv Hughes, David Boone, Ian Healy and Stephen Waugh, soon morphed into a mercilessly professional and competent unit which ensured that Australia won every single Ashes in the 90s up to the series in 2005 by convincing margins. Indeed, Australia's record between 1989 and 2005 had a significant impact on the statistics between the two sides. Before the 1989 series began, the win-loss ratio was almost even, with 87 test wins for Australia to England's 86, 74 tests having been drawn. By the 2005 series, Australia's test wins had increased to 115, whereas England's had increased to only 93. While Australia saw many greats during this period, the ones who had maximum impact on the English team were swing master Glenn McGrath and spin wizard Shane Warne. But even of these two, it was Warne who spun a web of absolute fear and panic around the English batsmen, from which not a single batsman emerged unscathed during this period. Warne's arrival into England itself was possibly the most dramatic of all cricketing feats. His first ball to Mike Gatting, acknowledged as one of the best players of spin in the English team, pitched way outside leg stump and hit an utterly befuddled Gatting's off stump as he offered no shot to it. Termed as the ball of the century, it was as if the single ball emblazoned Aussie's supremacy into English skin over this long period of time. English redemption happened in 2005 when a young, spirited team under Michael Vaughan defeated Ricky Ponting's mighty Aussies 2-1 in one of the greatest Test series in cricket history. The first Test at Lord's was convincingly won by Australia, but England fought back to win the second Test at Headingley by 2 runs, the smallest winning margin in Ashes history and the second smallest in all Tests. The rain-affected third Test ended with the last 2 Australian batsmen holding out for a draw, and England won the fourth Test by 3 wickets after forcing Australia to follow on for the first time in 191 Tests. A draw in the final Test gave England victory in an Ashes series for the first time in 18 years and their first Ashes victory at home since 1985. The find of the series for the English was Kevin Pietersen, who finally showed the English that McGrath and Vaughan could not just be tackled, but also dominated. Australia avenged its loss in 2005 in style, winning 5-0 at home in 2006-07. Since then, the honours have mostly been shared. Australia trounced England 5-0 again in 2013-14 and recorded 4-0 victories in the 2017-18 and 21-22 home series, while England won 2-1 in 2009, 3-0 in 2013 and 3-1 in 2015 at home and 3-1 again in 2010-11 away. The 2010-11 series was important statistically, with England becoming the only team which had won 3 Tests by innings margins. It was also the first time England had scored 500 or more 4 times in a single series. Australia had no answer to England's wily fast bowlers James Anderson and Stuart Broad during this period. Anderson and Broad repeatedly ate up the Aussie batsmen for breakfast, lunch and dinner. The series in 2019 and 2023 were drawn 2-2. The upcoming Ashes to be played in Australia promises to be a pot boiler. Both teams appear almost evenly matched, with the English perhaps holding a slight edge in batting, with Root, Stokes and Brooke in good form, while the Australian fast bowling with Stark, Hazlewood and Boland are clearly superior, at least in name, over their English counterparts. So, will Bazball still hold firm? Will Australia solve its opening problems? We'll find out soon enough.